everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. It's 7 o'clock and want to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. So want to say thank you for coming out on a really cold evening. You could be at home watching this being live streamed, so appreciate people showing up in person tonight. Welcome to our first Bulldog Dialogue of the year. We're going to have probably at least 2 more, and we'll get those dates set for kind of midwinter and then springtime. And we started this last year, only got 2 in last year, but basically this is the overview and the goals of Bulldog Dialogue. And it's just to open up lines of communication between the school district and parents and community members. These meetings are open to anybody who wants to attend. You don't have to be a parent, but it looks like most of you are. So appreciate you being here tonight. And this is an opportunity to hear a little bit about some current events in the school district and also ask any questions that you might have, express any concerns that you might have. If I can't get an answer back to you this evening, then I'll circle back with you sometime in the next couple of days. So what we do typically is have a little bit of a brief presentation for 15 or 20 minutes and then open up the rest of the hour for questions and answers, and then finish up at 8 o'clock. This evening, we are going to hear from our new school resource officer, Bill Ward, and I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction and then hand off the floor to him so that he can tell you a little bit about what his role is in the school district and what he's been up to for the last couple of months. We're almost at the end of the first semester, so this is a good opportunity to hear from him and hear what's been going on in his life and in our schools. And then we'll wrap up at 8 o'clock. If there are still questions or if discussion needs to continue past 8 o'clock, I'm happy to stay and do that. But we just keep the meetings at an hour just to keep everybody's on schedule and respect your time. And it's also a school night, so everybody can get home at a reasonable time. So there's a couple of pieces of paper over here on the table, as well as some leftover Halloween candy, which we're still plowing our way through. So feel free to go treat yourself to that. There's a sign-in sheet. If everybody could please sign in, we'd like to know who comes. I'm not going to bombard you with any more emails than you're already getting from me, but I will, next time we have Bulldog Dialogue, I will send out an email to you personally just reminding you that our next meeting is coming up. And then there's also a question sheet, so that if you don't want to ask a question or if we run out of time, please write it down on the sheet. You can just leave it on your chair or give it to me when we're done. If you leave your contact information on that sheet of paper, then I will also get back to you with an answer to your question. So those resources are available to you as well. All right, my role here tonight at the beginning of the meeting is just to provide an overview of our School Resource Officer program. Just a brief bit of history. We started talking about adding a school resource officer to our schools last spring, and when I say we, I mean the school district and the village of Mahomet. And we both seem to have a pretty strong desire to make that happen. We were the only school district in Champaign County that did not have a designated school resource officer, and we just felt that at this time that was an appropriate addition to our safety and security plans and how we wanted to approach safety and security in our schools. And so very, very thankful that the village was also extremely interested in implementing that, and also had exactly the right person to fill the role with Officer Ward. So this is just this paragraph here is taken straight out of the intergovernmental agreement that we have with the village of Mahomet that describes what the School Resource Officer program is all about. I'm not going to read that to you, but this is an overview of what the mission of the program is. And then these are some more specific actions that the School Resource Officer is entrusted to carry out when he's working in our buildings. And at the very top of the list, I think, is perhaps the most important element of what Officer Ward does every day, and that is to establish trusting channels of communication with students, parents, and teachers. Of course, serving as a positive role model is also an excellent thing as well. And also being able to promote citizen awareness of the law, having our students become more informed and more effective citizens, empowering them with knowledge of law enforcement and different aspects of the law. And then also, the school resource officer can serve as a confidential resource for students and families in need, if they need specific resources that maybe they're not comfortable asking for from school personnel. The school resource officer is an excellent liaison to provide that kind of information as well. And so that's my spiel this evening, and Officer Ward is going to speak for a couple of minutes, and then we'll open up the floor to questions to him, questions to me. I also want to just introduce Lori Larson and Max McComb, two of our school board members who are here with us this evening as well. So without further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce Officer Bill Ward, our school resource officer.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. I appreciate that. I see a few faces that I'm familiar with, which is a wonderful thing. It's nice to see that parents are involved in their school, their children's education. I think that's very important. My kids go to the Unity School District, and my wife and I as well are very involved in there in the PTO organization, and we try to make it to as many meetings and be involved in our children's education. I think that's very, very important. I grew up in a family where my parents didn't really care much about my education, to be honest with you. They went to the parent-teacher conferences that were required, and that was about it. And so, you know, it is what it is. But so I made sure when I had children that I focus on that and I pay attention to that. So I'm Bill Ward. I've met some of you. Some of you that have not met me. I'll give you a quick, brief introduction of myself. I grew up in Champaign, Illinois, went to Champaign Central High School, graduated there in 1987. Things have changed a lot there. I wouldn't want to raise my kids in Champaign and go to their schools anymore. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality of it. So glad that my kids are in a school district that is in my opinion, as you know, well prepared as the Muhammad School District. So after graduating high school, I went to Parkland College, spent 2 years at Parkland College, and then went to Illinois State University, completed my education there, and I'd always wanted to be a police officer. I make the joke, one of my best buddies is a Champaign firefighter, he makes the joke that I went to the wrong line when we tested, but truly I always wanted to be a police officer. So went to the Police Training Institute after I got hired by my first department, which was the Piatt County Sheriff's Department over in Monticello, if anybody you're familiar with that. Spent a few years there and then came to Muhammad. Started in Muhammad in 1994 and have been here ever since. Have always loved the small town atmosphere. I like the community-oriented policing. I like the ability to be able to interact with the public on more of a level than just going and taking a report and giving you a number and sending you on down the road. I always liked the smaller community, and Muhammad gave me that ability. As I progressed in my career, I did a few other things like be involved in the SWAT team for 9 years, but with 20 plus years on and approaching 50, something was starting to wear at me being on the streets. And I was really looking for something new, something more exciting. And I had always been one of the proponents of a school resource officer here in Muhammad. I had always said, why does Muhammad not have a school resource program? Unity has had one forever, as long as my kids have been in school. They've had officer or deputy friends out there. Somebody that the kids could go to, somebody that the parents could call and ask questions of. Why doesn't Muhammad have that? Thank goodness for Dr. Hall. She came aboard, and I think it just all finally came together. And I'm so excited about being able to be the person to fill the spot. It's really exciting. It's a new change for me. I love children. I love dealing with kids. I love mentoring kids. I love just talking to them. It's enjoyable to me. So that is the main objective of me taking this position, is to be able to work with the kids and make this a safe and secure environment, learning environment for the kids here at Muhammad Seymour High School. So what is a school resource officer? For those of you who don't know, as the mission statement says, my main goal is to provide a safe and secure environment, learning environment for the kids. And we accomplish that in many different ways. From just the mere presence of being in the schools, walking the hallways, being around the schools, being on the roadways in a marked unit during the morning commute to school and the afternoon departure is a presence that not only you parents feel more comfortable with, I hope, but the kids also see me, and it prevents them from maybe going awry, going astray, making bad choices. Okay? And if there's, obviously somebody bad out there that's looking to cause harm on our school district, hopefully my mere presence is going to hopefully prevent that. My normal day is spent doing 3 different things. I'd say about 40% of it is mentoring and talking to the kids. Another 40 to 45, 50% of it is being in the classrooms, spending time with the kids, doing law-related programs for them. And then maybe, 5-10% at most is actually law enforcement related. So the big misconception I get all the time is, so what is a school resource officer? He's just in there trying to write tickets and, getting the names of all the bad kids. So we have a list, if you will. Not true at all. The farthest from the truth. That is the least of my job description, is law enforcement. Obviously, it does occur at times, and we deal with that when it happens. But primarily, my main focus is being in the classrooms, presenting, being a guest speaker, and just being in the hallways and mentoring the kids, talking to them and mentoring and building those relationships. Unfortunately, one of the things I've always said to people is from the time these young children are that tall, we walk into a building like a restaurant or a grocery store or something, and mom or dad brings their child around the corner and they see the policeman, and what's the first thing they all say? Oh, you better behave, little Johnny, or we're going to have the policeman take you away. Bad, bad, bad. So for years, these kids learn that, that's the bad guy. But yet we're telling them that's the good guy. So we've created this division between the public and the police, the mistrust part of it. So one of my main focuses, and one of the main focuses of the school resource program, is to teach those kids that I'm just another person. I'm a trusted adult that you can come to at any time. We can be confidential with your conversation, and you can trust that I'm here to help you. So when I started this back in August, I had no clue what to expect. Being the first school resource officer in the school district, I didn't know what to expect. What's my day going to look like? What's a day? What's a normal day going to be? Well, there really isn't a normal day. I learned that it's a lot like being out on the streets. There really isn't a normal day. One day I might spend my whole day being in the classrooms, guest speaking, and the next day I might be dealing with something that's an unfortunate incident that has occurred at one of the schools, and we have to take care of it immediately. And I might have to cancel a guest speaking spot or two because something happened. So it's a lot like being out on the streets, just in a different situation. My beat isn't no longer the business district or the residential area, it's the schools. I spend the majority of my time at the high school because that's where my office is at. And that's where I found that the biggest need is at the high school. I next spend the next bit of my time is at the junior high. So the junior high level and the high school is where I spend the majority of my time. I try to make it to the elementary schools as often as I can, which I'm usually here a few times a week at each school. It might only be enough time to walk through, say hi, shake hands, high five, get down on my knees and play with them. At the Lincoln Trail, I go jump rope with them, play basketball with them. They got me to get on the monkey bars one day. That won't happen again. With all of this stuff on, boy, was I sore the next night going across the monkey bars. So the majority of my time, like I said, is spent at the high school. At the high school, we're doing several different programs that we've already implemented. We're doing a safety program. We're using what's called the ALICE curriculum. If you're not familiar with ALICE, it's alert, lockdown, inform, counter, and evacuate. It's a program created by the Alice Institute that is by no means mandated, but it's recommended by the what
U.S. Department of Education.
The U.S. Department of Education. Sorry, as soon as I started to say it, I forgot what it's called. The U.S. Department of Education recommends it. We use it. Each of our classes in the high school level, from freshman to senior, get 6 sessions this year. And we cover all different parts of the Alice curriculum. We put them into some scenarios. We've even created a video that we use the industrial technologies class that does the editing and videography, and the drama club to create a video, several videos, and in fact, that we're using to promote the lockdown method, the evacuation. We did our school evacuation drill here back in October, and we had them videotape that, and we're using that in our presentation. So when the kids are in there learning, they're seeing videos of their own school, their own classmates, and I think it kind of drives it home a little better. It seems like to them. We've had a lot of comments, positive comments about it once they saw the lockdown part of it. So we're working on doing that. We're doing more videos as we speak, and we're going to continue to evolve that program. Not sure what it's going to look like. Myself and Mr. Benedict and Kristen Allen, one of our PE teachers there at the high school, have worked together, the 3 of us, to develop the program. And so, after the first year, we're not sure what it's going to look like, how it's going to work every year, but everybody this year is getting it. So next year we've discussed maybe just doing the June or the incoming freshmen. So we'll see what that looks like. My typical day, for those of you that wander around, what does he do? Just drive around? Does he just walk around? I would say I get to the school, my typical hours are 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Obviously, when there's extracurricular activities like tonight, I will stay and do those. I work all of the football games. I will work all of the dances. I will work a number of the home basketball games. I work with Matt Hensley, our athletic director and assistant principal at the high school, to determine what games he feels it's necessary to have a police officer at. So I will work at those games. And any other activities that occur throughout the year, whether we have, some of our athletic teams go to sectionals or something we host, I'll probably be present for those. Again, it's all new for me, so I'm not really sure, as the year progresses, where my feet will land when it comes to extracurricular activities. I've already been asked to be a part of the parent-teacher and the teacher advisory committee, which we had our first meeting there. I've been involved in several other groups, attending their meetings and speaking to them, asking or answering questions that they might have of me. And then, of course, my daily routine of getting to all the schools and being available for the kids. Just today, I had a parent call concerned with whether bullying went on at the school. And we had about a 20-minute conversation. He wasn't looking to tell me about any bullying that had occurred. He was just concerned that he had read something about bullying on the internet, because everything on the internet's true. And so he had some questions about bullying and the steps that we take as a school district. So I worked with our assistant principal and our principal at the high school, Mr. Cheek and Mr. Benedict. I asked them some questions and was able to get back to the parent, and we had a really good conversation and left him with my phone number, and if he had any other questions, to call me. Again, the word resource is the one thing that when I explain to people what it is exactly that. I am a resource, not only for the administration, but the staff and the students and even the parents. I've worked with several of the parents throughout the school district this year already on individual issues with their children. So, I mean, as parents, if you have any issues, certainly, I'm always available. At the high school and here at the elementary school here, and I believe Lincoln Trail does, and I know junior high does, they have my business card right there at the front office. So if you go into any of those schools, and I'll make sure it's at the Lincoln Trail. That's the only one I'm not sure if they put it up there or not, but I know at the other 3 schools, my business card is right there at the front of the office. And if you ever, need me, grab one of my business cards and give me a shout. It's not a problem. I've got my cell number on it, and you guys can call me at any time. So, any questions, concerns, comments?
Do you interact with the other school resource officers in the area?
I do. In fact, just last week I got a email from the Illinois School Resource Officers Association inviting me to become a member of that. And I spoke to the gentleman that's the president of the organization, and he is the school resource officer at, I think it was Triad High School down in Troy, Illinois. So there you go. Am I correct, Troy, Illinois? Yep. So I picked up a resource there. Very nice guy. I'm also friends with the school resource officer in Rantoul, who happens to be cousins with the school resource officer in Highland, Illinois. So I met him. So yes, I've already, picked up some resources from those gentlemen. And so yes, I'm a member of the National Association of School Resource Officers, which is where I got my training. If I didn't mention that, I spent 2 weeks at what's called NASRO, the National Association of School Resource Officers. Not required in the state of Illinois to be certified as a school resource officer. But of course, we thought that was the best way to go about it. So I spent 2 weeks in Peoria going through that training. And so I got a lot of contacts there. And then of course, like I said, the Illinois School Resource Officers Association, I'll soon be becoming a member of that and be able to gain some valuable contacts with that as well. So yes, they're great resources to bounce off of, especially when you're in your first year doing it. So I've got the law enforcement experience, but again, this is a whole different, type of law enforcement. It really is. One of the things I've talked to my wife about is the way you deal with difficult people is sometimes has to be different on the streets, certainly than how you're dealing with a 13, 14, 15-year-old student. It's taken me a bit, and obviously I'm still learning, but it's going to take me a bit to get used to that. Even though I have 2 myself, we all know that the way my child acts with me is totally different than the way he acts with grandma and grandpa or aunt and uncle or something like that. He's a complete angel with them. But, so the difference in policing, the difference in doing your job is so night and day from being outside these 4 walls than it is inside here. And that's a learning curve I'm still working on.
That's what we call it in education, differentiating your instruction. So,
is that it? Yeah. Well, that's been my biggest learning curve. The answering questions when they have, law-related questions for me. I love those. Spending time just talking to them and just spending 5 or 10 minutes with them. But when it's the dealing with emotional issues and things like that, I'm learning. and I'm using the resources within the school district every day to help me learn that. Our social workers and our psychologists and our assistant principals, the assistant principals at all the schools have been an integral part of me, my learning process here. I've really come to depend on them a lot for guidance in some of those situations. Yes?
Nationally, across the state, they're talking about putting guns in schools, arming teachers and other personnel in the school. What is the latest on that in state law or issues or debate, and what is the interest in the school district of that debate? Is that anything they talked about, concerned about? What's the discussion on
Arming staff,
Arming staff, yeah.
we don't have an interest in doing that.
I was gonna say, I can give you my opinion, that's not the answer.
We have a school resource officer, we have a trained person, who is, and that's not to say that there aren't citizens or staff members who are highly trained with firearms, but we feel that this is the best route to go. There's been a lot of discussion in the state about potentially arming teachers. The Illinois Association of School Boards recently, at the annual conference in Chicago last weekend, a resolution came forward to what's called the Delegate Assembly, and those are representatives from school boards around the state, and resolutions come forth that potentially could move on to become legislation. And there was a resolution that came before the Delegate Assembly, which was to hand that decision about arming staff members over to local school boards so that it's a local decision, and that resolution was defeated. Now that's not the only means by which legislation can get introduced, but that's how that idea went. So I know it's a debate. We feel here that our school resource officer is the best person to handle those duties in terms of firearms.
I just didn't know what the latest conversation was and interest in the area.
Great question.
Yes, sir.
So along those lines, we have multiple campuses and multiple buildings. Do we have enough SROs, or do we need more?
So, when I went through my training, that was a big topic of discussion. As in law enforcement, there's a national statistical average of number of population to police officer, and that also is in policing for schools. And the national average, according to the NASRO, National Social School Resource Officers, is 1 SRO per 1,000 students. So you can do the math. We do have more than 1,000 students here in the school district. Do I feel, my personal opinion, that we need another school resource officer at this time? Probably not. I think it's a new program. We need to figure out the program first, but is it something that, might be recommended down the road? It's certainly possible. I can see the need for it down the road for sure. I will tell you this, I'm a lot busier than I thought I would be. Not that I thought I was going to come in here and sit down and just put my feet up on a desk. That's not my style anyway, but it is much busier than I thought it would be. My calendar fills up pretty quick every week, and sometimes monthly. I'm looking, people are, there are teachers calling me now or sending me emails now asking me to guest speak in their class, and I'm already having to push it back to after the new year because it's just not fitting into my schedule. So could I see it potentially, maybe needing a second school resource officer down the road? Certainly. When that'll be, I don't know. That's something that the school district and the village will have to determine.
Dr. Hall, roughly what is our student body population for all campuses combined?
We're just under 3,200 students.
Okay.
Yes.
So related to that, what reports or data do you gather, and is there a plan for reporting out annually, semi-annually?
So that's something that she'll have to answer for you. I do know that I didn't make a daily activity log. I make a daily report of all of my activity, which goes into the police system. Now I know that information is available to the school district. I don't know how often we're going to process that information, if it's a monthly thing that the chief and the superintendent work with, but I do a daily activity log that says everything I've done throughout every day, and then that information is obviously available to the school district.
I can't say that we have a specific plan we're most interested in student contacts. Anything that's going to fall under the umbrella of law enforcement is going to, fall under the responsibility of the Mahomet Police Department. But I think in terms of classroom visits and safety trainings, those are things we are tracking on. And certainly, I can see at the end of the year just providing an overview and looking at what went well, where do we need work, those types of things. But right now, it still seems fresh and new, and as Bill has said, just kind of navigating his way through what our needs are and what our student needs are.
I think about in the sense of if there is down the road the idea or the thought or the decision whether to add another resource officer, potentially more detailed information to help
Absolutely,
inform
that.
that.
You bet.
Well, and other districts cover it, and I'll speak this because I'm a school employee, but not a Mohammed, since I'm on the school board, I don't work in our district any longer. They have a school resource officer, I worked with the one at Central this past year, and then they have Risk Watch, so they have different programs that are covered. Risk Watch is a program that some schools do in the state where they come in and they teach kind of violence prevention and bully prevention, but they're a person that looks a lot like Mr. Ward, but they may not be an officer. And so there are other ways, if you have that data tracking, that you can cover those things too. Because his goal, you're kind of a dual role, correct? That's how Dr. Hall, if you said, you know, there's policing and then there's school resource officer.
Is the district tracking the historical number of incidents of violence in the schools?
Yes.
So that we can, after this initial year, determine?
Yeah, there are actually certain incidents of, you know, disciplinary action that have to be reported to the state. So anything with weapons, any drug offenses, and any assaults, we track we track all disciplinary infractions and consequences within our student database. But then there are, as I just mentioned, those 3 areas that get reported to the state as well. So we're thankfully those are few and far between, but we absolutely can look at that data.
And then, of course, through our system, the Uniform Crime Reporting, which is a nationwide, it's through the federal government. We must report monthly all of our crime statistics. So, and where the crimes occurred. So those can be tracked as well through our system. The criminal incidents.
Now, what about the times where you are called upon to help mediate, as you know, you and I have worked together on certain things, to mediate issues between students that are not weapon, assault, or drug related? Are those being tracked so that we know kind of where you're falling with that and how much use for that is being used? Because I think a lot of, like you were saying, what you're doing is, you know, being there, mentoring, you know, having those mediation type situations.
And some of it's hard to track, you know. Obviously my day-to-day contacts with students in the hallways and stuff like that, where we're just building relationships and breaking down barriers, that's going to be difficult to track, obviously. But what you're talking about is individual incidents, and yes, those are tracked through our system. I do know that. And then I do know through the Skyward system that the school district uses, they're also tracked through there. So I think they're actually being dually tracked. They're dually, reported.
When other personnel, such as social workers or counselors, talk with, there's records and logs of that. A lot of that is obviously confidential information, but that's helpful in just informing, what's been tried, what do we need to do differently, what interventions and support have been provided, and do we need to take a different direction. And certainly now, Officer Ward is part of those conversations. Not all the time, but certainly some of the time.
Right.
Yeah, anytime, to answer your question, anytime I'm involved in any type of a mediation, as you said, even a incident of, a kid caught with a smoking device or something, if I'm involved, that's documented in our police system. And that information. And then I'm assuming that I know at the high school level, Mr. Benedict, who deals with all those, then enters that same information into the Skyward system.
So it is being tracked on both ends?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Let me just say one more thing about data really quick, so hold all your questions and remember what they are. But we, in our buildings, we do look at student behavior data so that we can look at like antecedents and things or areas or situations that might cause or contribute to certain types of behaviors, so that then we can take a step back and say, okay, these are things that occur before this behavior occurs, and then we can kind of maybe address some environmental types of situations. So We have data teams in our buildings that look at that from a preventive standpoint. So gathering that data is helpful, not only from a school-wide standpoint, but then also often on individual students as well. That's very informative, and we can try to strategize so we can stay out in front of some things and be proactive.
Thank you.
I think you had a question.
I was just gonna ask if you do formal station adjustments.
We do.
And have you seen that that's been an increase since you've been a resource officer, or is that something that will?
No, I can't say it's been an increase.
Sorry, can you say what that is, please?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask what is a formal station adjustment, I'm sorry.
It's basically a juvenile contact where we can make we can do an adjustment to their behavior and perhaps some penalties that stay within the police department, and they don't go on their record as long as they fulfill their requirements that they've agreed to and their parents have agreed to.
Got it.
So it's basically kind of holding them accountable for the actions their actions, but yet because of their age, their maturity level, and the fact that they don't necessarily always make the right choices because they're learning and they're growing, it's a way to keep them out of the juvenile justice system, if you will.
Like
So we're not.
an informal step before things maybe
Yes,
get
exactly.
I say as a parent, it's a positive.
Yeah, exactly. And you make a key point. They're only effective if we have a parent that's willing to work with us. Unfortunately, some of those, we put them in a station adjustment, but we don't have a parent there to help us enforce the agreement. So unfortunately, they end up in the juvenile justice system because they don't technically have a parent that's involved. So, but that's what it is. It's trying to keep them out of that justice system so that they don't have a record, and yet but still dealing with an issue. Yes.
You mentioned when you give presentations and things like that, is that also primarily at the high school and the junior high?
Oh,
I'm
absolutely not.
just wondering, like, how much contact the younger schools get, because I think we can safely say that some of those behavioral issues that we're trying to get on top of occur at those younger levels. So I'm just interested to know
I'm going to
what the plan is for having impact on those younger levels to kind of stay off these problems becoming.
The short answer is yes. I'm at all the schools and I'm presenting at all the schools as often as I can. But I'm going to circle back to that question about if we need more school resource officers. I have found that it is a lot. Like I said, I'm spending a lot of time at the high school and junior high level, and I'm wanting to be here more often, but sometimes my time is taken away by other issues that are more pressing at the time that have to be dealt with immediately. But yes, I am in this school. I am at Lincoln Trail as often as I can be there, and I'm in the classrooms talking to the children, setting with them. In fact, I just got a nice big thank you card from one of the pre-Ks here at Middletown the other day with pictures of me on the floor with them, and they're playing with my handcuffs, and that's what it's all about. That is really, truly what it's all about.
Because
getting them comfortable with me.
Yes.
So that they're not in that situation where I'm a stranger to them, or I'm the cop that scares them. I've even worked with several, and I think Dr. Halls might be aware of most of these, but I've worked with several children here at Middletown especially that have some truancy issues. And I've worked with the Mrs. Starwalt and Mr. Martin in doing some welfare checks at their residence and making sure they're taken care of. And because there's usually, as most of us as parents know, a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old doesn't just choose not to go to school. So when they're showing signs of consistent truancy, there's more of a bigger issue than just the child not coming to school. And so I've been involved in at least 2 of those already this year, in going out and working with the parents, as well as, unfortunately, DCFS getting involved. So there's a whole lot more things I'm getting involved in that I never would have told you, I never would have guessed I was getting involved in before this position became available. So I'm really, like I said, we're going to ask them.
Do you remember Michelle? I was like, I have to cross my fingers.
What's your tying back to the village then? Are you still meeting with their police department at all, or is it?
I'm still their police department. I'm still the mom.
But you're still, so you're still going to, I mean, what's the how frequently do you?
Every day.
Okay.
I just came from there before I came here. I'm still an integral part of the Mahama Police Department. I still work some overtime shifts on days when there's no school here. If I choose to, if it's not a holiday for the village, like last Thursday and Friday, if it's not a holiday for the village, I have to make a choice. Do I want to take vacation time, comp time, or personal time, or do I want to work the streets? And I've been choosing to work the streets because I still enjoy that. I still enjoy that part of law enforcement, but I really enjoy this part.
Can you switch positions with my husband?
So do you understand the IGA? Because I think like the intergovernmental, would you explain that to me?
Yeah, so Bill is in our schools 9 months out of the year, and then for 3 months in the summertime back on.
We don't know. I don't know how. Everybody asks me that question. What are you going to do in the summer? I'm not
Police
sure.
department wants to do. So the school district pays 75% of the salary and benefits, and then so that's the agreement that we have. So there's our need for him in the summertime goes way down, but one of the cool things I see about this whole arrangement and this relationship is that by being in the schools for 9 months out of the year in the summertime, he's going to have a lot of contact with kiddos that he's hopefully
That's right.
created some really positive relationships with during the school year. And then that's where, and I think Chief Metzler in the village would agree, that that's where there's a benefit for them as well.
Exactly.
That all the work inside the school kind of pays off in some other venues and things outside of school as well.
Perfect example of exactly what we're looking to get out of this program. A few weeks ago, my youngest son had a birthday. He wanted to have all of his friends go to the new Elevate trampoline park in Champaign. So we took him and 10 of his friends to Elevate. I'm standing watching the boys jump around on the trampolines, and somebody comes up behind me and gives me this big bear hug. And it's one of the high school juniors on the football team. Somebody I did not know prior to August of this year. But in that short period of time, not only does he feel comfortable enough with me to come up and speak to me, but he feels comfortable enough to come up and give me a bear hug.
From behind.
From behind. I know. Yeah, the only good thing is he's about 100 pounds more than me, so I was like, oh no. God, I hope this is somebody I know.
At some point, we need to add the part about not sneaking up behind them.
That's only
Trust me, even in my own household, if I sneak up behind my husband,
yeah, exactly. So
you learn not to.
So what really impressed me is that he recognized me out of uniform, because you having a husband that's in law enforcement, you've heard it thousands of times in your lifetime with him. You'll see people that they know who he is, but they're not quite sure who he is.
Mm-hmm.
They recognize him, but they're not sure, because in uniform and out of uniform, we look so much different.
Right.
Oh, I didn't recognize you or out of uniform. We hear that all the time, but this young guy knew exactly who I was. And it was my wife. We're driving home, and my wife's like, who was that? And I'm explaining to her who it was. And I was so excited. It's the funniest thing, because I was excited. I'm like, they recognized me. They recognized me out of uniform. I'm making an impact.
Well, and that was going to be my question, coming from a law enforcement family, and, like you were saying, so many times parents or family members who are not law enforcement families will be like, if you don't do this, we're gonna, call the police to come and talk to you, or, and kind of make you out to be the bad guy, when really they should be the ones that, you should be the one that they run to when they need help.
Sure, then the following week, the cop shows up at their school and tells them, if you need somebody, always come to the policeman or the fireman. And they're like, I'm not coming to the policeman because Dad said the policeman is going to take me to jail.
So in the short time that you have been with the district and in the schools, have you noticed a difference in the interaction between yourself and the students, as far as them being more standoffish to begin with, as to now, like where they're sneaking up behind you and giving you a bear hug? But like, is that kind of what you're seeing evolving?
Yep. I have a student at the high school level that when we started school, as he would walk past me, I could tell the first few times he walked past me, he gave me a big wide girth, and he put his head down and walked, So I asked one of the assistant principals one day, who is that young man? He told me who he was, and I tried to make it a goal to get him to talk to me. My first goal was to get him to look at me and not make this big, earth around me. And at this time now, we're 3 months into this, he walks into my office and takes a sucker. I have Mr. Lynn over there knows. I call him my K9 unit. So when my youngest son was a Paw Patrol, for Halloween one year, we still had the little Paw Patrol basket for the treats. So I put suckers in that, and it's on my desk. And anytime I come here for any presentations, you might have seen me walking through the hallway with it. I know Jared has. I'll walk through the hall with my little Paw Patrol thing full of suckers for the kids, and I just joke with them that that's my K9 unit. And this young man now will walk into my office and take a sucker and stand and talk to me.
That's good.
Success.
That's great.
To me, that's a success.
So
He went from not even wanting to look at me to now he'll walk in and feels comfortable enough to talk and have a sucker. Yes, sir.
You mentioned uniforms a minute ago, and I think I know the answer to this, but for the benefit of the rest of the group, how often do you dress like you're dressed now? How often do you change up what you're wearing, and what's the theory behind that?
So, daily, I wear this uniform. One was for the initial presence and the kids getting to know me. And we're still working through that. So I will certainly be in uniform through the rest of this semester for sure. We have discussed a little bit about maybe doing a soft uniform every now and then, a pair of khakis and maybe a polo shirt. But the first and foremost reason, and I explained this in all of our safety classes that we've had, one of the sessions of the safety class, I explained to the kids why I'm in this uniform. And one of the things I say to them is it's not to browbeat you guys and let you know that, hey, I'm the police and you're, it's for the purpose of my safety. So we're in a small community, okay? On any given day, we might only have 3, 4 at the most police officers working the streets of Mahomet. So we can't be like Champaign-Urbana where we might have 12, 15, 16 officers. So in the event of an incident at our high school, at our junior high, or any of our schools for that matter, especially if it's a violent situation where there might be, police officers coming in from other jurisdictions, and I say other jurisdictions, I mean, again, in a small community, we are going to get police officers from perhaps Gibson City, obviously Champaign-Urbana, University of Illinois, the Sheriff's Department, the State Police, perhaps Piatt County, perhaps other jurisdictions, Fisher, anybody that's going to have police officers on duty at the time. If there's a violent situation at one of the schools, you're going to get officers from every jurisdiction. We also have intergovernmental agreements. For my safety, I want them to know that I'm a police officer. I want them to know I'm one of them. I don't want to become the suspect, if you will, because I'm running down the hallway with perhaps a weapon.
Well, not only that, but I would think also for your protection for a student that you may be one-on-one with.
Sure. That is also it. But my primary was, like I said, self-preservation. Like I tell them, I have a 9-year-old and an almost 14-year-old at home and a wife that I've been married to for 19 years. I want to go home to them at the end of my shift. That's my primary goal. So that is the main reason I wear this uniform, is for the presence for other officers if ever there were an incident. But yes, we have had some discussions with perhaps here and there doing a soft uniform, like maybe, on a Friday afternoon or, Friday or once a month or something. But I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know how that's going to look.
On the back.
Yeah. We've discussed maybe coming up with a polo shirt that perhaps has the Bulldog logo and maybe the patch, our badge on it with my name. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm most comfortable, to be honest with you, in my uniform. I know it seems funny to think that. You're adding 30 pounds. It's like one of the questions I had in one of the classes I had at the high school one day is how much does everything weigh? 33 pounds is what all this weighs. If I take it off and weigh myself and then put all my stuff on, I'm 33 pounds heavier. With this vest, the gun, the belt, the boots, everything. So, but I'm most comfortable in it. And it's probably just because I've been in it for so long. It's what I wear. It's how I do my job, and I like having my stuff. So, I don't know, but that's when people ask, why are you in the uniform, that's why, for the presence, so that other officers in the event know that I'm who I am. Go ahead.
I know this year we implemented some new safety procedures at football games. Do you see any improvements with that, or any reduced incidences? Are people following it, or concerns, comments, questions about that, or was it?
What safety, what ones are you speaking of?
Well, we made, and I would say the high school administration made some very focused efforts with communicating much more clearly about property boundaries and where kids can and can't be.
Yeah.
And, I have to commend Tanya because she brought some things to attention that we needed to look at. And from my standpoint, I think it turned out very well. The area, and I'll explain that by saying that, the area to supervise there is massive. Mm-hmm. And we talked about what would be the best way to keep kids basically out of dark wooded areas, which, no one needs to be back there. Mm-hmm. So I do think that improved. There's a pretty disproportionate ratio of school personnel and law enforcement compared to the massive quantities of mostly like upper elementary, middle school kids who play out there unsupervised. My dream world would be every child sits with their parent, and we know that's not going to happen. Kids want to go, they want to have fun. That it just doesn't work out that way. We have very, very few, if any, problems at our football games. Fans, kids, community members, visiting teams, all extraordinarily well behaved. So I think that
So now that
we're always open to suggestions though.
Now that I understand exactly what you're talking about. Yes, so I'm at every football game. And then we always attempt to have another officer that's working the shift work come in and assist me. And we're doing routine patrols around not only the home area, but the visiting area. And we're making patrols out and around that perimeter area just to make sure the kids are where they're supposed to be. And I had no problems this year during the football games at all. If the kids were even remotely farther than they should be, as soon as they saw me coming around, they were right back where they needed to be.
The times that I checked at the football games, it seemed to be less kids were playing in that big practice field over there than there were in years past. So I thought that was a good progress. And I hope that we keep reminding them every year.
Absolutely.
To just make that an off limits area. It's just even where the doors are into the high school on that far side that faces the baseball field. Those are deep, dark corners that are not lit, and to me that terrifies me. I wouldn't let my kids walk over there by themselves at all, because it's just, I don't know if there's cameras there or whatnot, but that's a very dangerous, walking on that whole side of that building, I think is very dangerous.
Well, I can tell you this, one thing, and I don't know how this will progress, but I do know that speaking of the high school, myself and Mr. Benedict, the assistant principal, have already started making a list of places we would like to see more cameras, more lights, and things of that nature. So those safety issues. Now, whether or not those will happen, rapidly or not, I don't know, but there's certainly lists we're making to bring to the board's attention and Dr. Hall's attention that, maybe we can adjust some things there. Because I know there's a few places here and there that we've already found at the high school that the cameras don't quite catch. And it always seems to be, it just happened last week to me, it always seems to be that's where the car was parked or something happened just out of the view of the camera.
So it's an ongoing project with cameras and lighting that we're working to get better.
Yep.
Been after that for a while.
Yep. And as long as we just keep.
In front of the high school is dark. You think we had in front of the high school lit.
And I think having me in there and Mr. Benedict and another set of eyes to look at things, maybe, we'll never make it perfect, but we'll be a work in progress.
Huge improvement in terms of lighting at the high school is also what we call the band parking lot, the upper area. That was completely unlighted, and thanks to the generosity of Scott Davis, who donated time and materials, that is now extremely well lit, which is just another kind of crime prevention safety thing. And then our band can also utilize that area in the evening to practice as well.
Yep.
In terms of I know that the program is new, but in terms of the resource officer informing things like behavioral intervention policies that the district adopts and how we use those policies throughout, some of the younger levels where you can't be on their day-to-day. Do we have any plans for how that is going to work moving forward? Do you see modifications to some of the policies and procedures that we have as a result of your work in the schools, and then how are we going to roll those types of things out?
Again, on that end, that's something that the school district and Dr. Hall will work with. I will certainly be a source of a reference for them for information, but obviously they're going to make policy changes and stuff like that. So I don't know if you
I would echo that. I think Officer Ward is a great resource, but in terms of our younger kids, we also have to look at just what's developmentally appropriate and whether involving law enforcement is the most appropriate kind of intervention to shape and change behavior at younger ages.
Yeah, I guess my question wasn't that he has to be involved, but how are there plans to change the policies and procedures that we have that are age appropriate as a result of this, so that as they move up, they know what to expect, the policies are consistent and moving along with them as they're age appropriately,
I can't speak to anything right now that we would change, but I certainly wouldn't rule that out. So I think we're
we
just
always
always
look
open
at
to
data
discussion. And
to drive our decision making, and Dr. Hall reports that kind of data with us at board meetings. We have there's a confidential section where we talk about confidential issues related to students and personnel issues, and we use that data to think about things like that. We have a committee that drives that. Does that sound?
yeah, and certainly at our younger,
I'm on that
with our
policy.
younger students who are having severe behavior problems, they pretty much almost always have an individualized behavior intervention plan that is tailored to those students' needs. And again, I would say Bill's an excellent resource, and moving ahead could definitely be part of informing policy and changes that we make. He's on the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee. We'll be reviewing the handbook in the springtime, as we always do. But the handbook is kind of our broad umbrella of policies, and it doesn't really drill down into some individual student needs.
So those BIPs or behavioral intervention plans that you're referring to, those are most typically tied to
an
IEP or a 504. Oftentimes.
But I'm not going to say 100% of the time.
Right.
So, yeah, but yes.
Okay.
Generally speaking.
BIPs, you're good.
Bib.
Aside from the ALICE training, can you give us an example of some other educational programs you do in the classrooms? What are some things that you're talking about with students?
So for example, I've been doing some driver education courses. I've been working with the driver's ed, Mr. Schwarzentraub, who puts on the driver's ed training at the high school level, and talking to kids and teaching them about safety when they're dealing with police officers on traffic stops and things of that nature. What happens when you're involved in an accident? How do you report it? Explaining the graduated driver's licensing system, which is a very complex, system. Once you learn it, it's pretty simple, but getting the grasp of it is somewhat difficult. So that how many passengers can you have that first year you have your license? What hours of the day can you drive at night? Things of that nature. What it looks like if you're involved in an accident. What it looks like if you get a traffic citation and must go to court. Those kind of things. So I'm working with Mr. Schwarzentraub to teach them that, and we're developing more stuff as we go.
Can I interject really quick?
Sure.
A great example of Officer Ward helping in that area is, if you have a child at the high school, or even if you don't, but if you happen to be there in the morning or in the evening, you have the buses parked in the front there, and we've seen some stop arm violations, which is really unfortunate. It's unfortunate everywhere, but when it happens right there, it is extremely difficult for our bus drivers to identify a car, get a license plate number. I mean, they're unloading kids, and so then he can circle back to driver's ed classes and talk about those specific examples, and hopefully address some safety issues right on our school property, but that's been a huge help as well with that specific situation.
I've done some law content in the social studies at the high school level. I've done some community-based stuff in the junior high, or the Lincoln Trail, the 3rd grade level, where they're learning briefly what government is. So I've gone in there to Mrs. Nicolette's class and spoke about what a police officer does in their communities. Same thing here at the little kids level. I've been into several of the classes, and when it was nice out, they were able to go out and see the police car, sit in the police car, play in the police car. Again, like I said earlier, I've got pictures in my office of the kids playing with my handcuffs, and how does the radio work, and why do you talk on the radio, and just things like that. Just really, as I've told all the teachers throughout the district, anything that I can help them with, I'm more than willing to help. I might not be an expert in the topic, but I can certainly, lend my opinion or things like that. And one of the junior high teachers in biology is going to be doing a crime scene. Something to do with crime scenes just after the first of the year. And she spoke to me a couple weeks ago about how how could I be involved in that. So as a resource, I've never been a crime scene technician, but I certainly know enough of them that I could certainly get her a resource and bring somebody in to talk about that in front of them and work with them on their little project. So again, as a resource, anything I can be of assistance. I've been working with any of the teachers. So.
At the training, I think, is there specific programs or curriculum that you have access to? Is there any intent to use any of that in any way? The SRO training, I thought that.
NASRO? Oh yeah, there's all kinds of content that they provide to us that I can use. Yeah, I can use their information. They even have PowerPoint presentations. So far, I've not done that. I've tried to build my own PowerPoint presentations only because I liked it to be more personable. Not to say I haven't used some of their stuff in my presentation. I'm certainly not going to say I've, reinvented the wheel. I'm not that crazy. But I've tried to put together my PowerPoint presentations so that they're more geared towards what we need in our district, as opposed to somebody else's. Yes.
Well, first I'd like to offer, if you need a guest speaker on what to do during a speeding violation, I think I could come in really. Very, a lot of experience on that. But this is the second time I've had the opportunity to interact with you, and I think as parents and citizens in Mahomet, there's this perception that if we need a school resource officer, then obviously we have a problem. And just what an incredible job you have done, not only with our students and our staff, to show this is a great communication builder, and you've bridged a lot of gaps. So as a parent, I think they would agree with the other parents here that we appreciate that very much. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I spent my last 15 years were on midnights. So I was very out of tune with what went on at the school, not only daytime, but in the schools. And I too had some part of a misconception, I'll be honest, that there was a lot more trouble than you thought. And you understand that. But there isn't. I tell you what, we have a lot of really good kids in this school system, and we have a lot of wonderful teachers. And I've not met anybody that works in this school district that doesn't genuinely care about this school district and about these kids. And I always kind of thought it was kind of crazy when I heard these other school resource officers throughout my career say, my kids, those are my kids. I understand what they're saying now, totally, and I've only been here 3 months. I can just see myself in 5 years saying, don't mess with my kids. You're gonna have problems, you gotta come through me and start messing with my kids. I can already see why they do that, why they say that. So yeah, I've jumped in with both feet. I'm giving 100+% every day. I'm trying, and yes, it's been very rewarding. And I too think that I have started to make an impact. And like I said, when I see the kid that won't walk next to me, won't look at me, now he's coming in my office and speaking to me without being spoken to, and he feels comfortable in just walking in and grabbing a sucker off my table. Or, you know, the kid that comes up and gives me the bear hug, you know, because he recognizes. I think it's starting to work, and I'm already seeing dividends.
Yeah.
Bill, I have 2 high school kids, and I was asking them, you know, I told them what I was doing tonight, and they were like, he's always busy. You can't really always necessarily talk to him because he's talking to somebody. And so that just made me feel good to tell you that, you know, you're visible and the kids notice that you're there and have relationships, so.
Well, I think that's.
And that's a boy and a girl who usually are on different planes, you know.
Now, my wife would tell you it's just because I just get the gab. But I'll tell you, I think that's part of the job. I think that's part of what makes this a job, me fit into this job well, is I do have the gift of gab. And I can pretty much talk to anybody. And, you know, I do. I'm the kind of guy that, in fact, one of my, you know, officers that I've worked with for years used to really get irritated with me because if I stopped somewhere at a restaurant or perhaps a gas station to get a cup of coffee or something, I always say hi to everybody I walk by. Nobody walks past me without getting a hello, how are you today? That's just my personality, and it really irritates me when I don't get one back.
Bless you.
I want to get that back. At least acknowledge that I just said hello to you, and you know, so I would actually walk around and make sure the person spoke to me. And that other officer would be like, you're crazy, you're crazy. I'm gonna make him talk to me. And so, yeah, I try to talk to as many of those kids.
Remember how you made him feel, so thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. They're busy kids in the high school. I mean, as I joke with them, you know, I can't believe we don't have more head-on collisions throughout the school day in the high school, because literally they have 3 minutes to get from one side of the school to the other to their next class, and we all know what our kids are doing in that 3 minutes. You know, if they're not using the restroom, they're doing this. As they walk through the hallways non-stop. And I don't know how many I've watched run into each other. You know, they do it all the time, but I love being out there, part of it. So tell them thank you for their kind words.
Well, Bill, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I think I'll wrap up by just saying that we were so fortunate to be able to do this, but then just have exactly the right human being to fill the role. So you're welcome to stick around if you want to talk some more. But thanks everybody for coming tonight. Really appreciate your time, and just appreciate your interaction with us and your questions, and enjoy your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.